Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is a man that knows that life's the same moving in stereo, except for the shoes. He is the captain.
And we'll all be okay as long as those shoes aren't Velcro. It's good to be seen, and it's good to see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
This week, we are very proud to be featuring Focal Banger by The Alchemist, garage grade 4 out of 5 bottle caps. Focal Banger is an American India Pale Ale, ABV 7%. At The Alchemist, they show some real love for IPAs and they brew focused on freshness. So you know you'll be drinking a fresh, clean, and delicious beer. Tall cans in the air, friends. And this tasty treat was brought to us by, first up, a big thank you to friend of the show, Rob P. out in Woodbury, Vermont.
And a big shout out to Krista up in North Vancouver, British Columbia.
And here's a cheers to Megan in Mills, Massachusetts.
And a big shout out to Scotty G in Niagara Falls.
Next, we have Francesca and her awesome mother, Pam, that is in the parts that are unknown. And last but not least, we have Jordan W. in Lawrence, Kansas. Everyone we just mentioned went to truecrimegarage.com and contributed to this week's beer fund, and for that, we thank you.
Do you know what the temperature is in parts unknown?
I have no idea. Good luck finding it on a map.
It's always 69, and that is enough of the business.
All right, everybody gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime. A 17-year-old girl goes out with friends to a party on a Saturday night. Nearing what was believed to be the end of her night, she calls her parents. This is just a brief and simple call, saying she plans to be home soon. But something happened. Something went wrong, because she does not come home. The next day, in the morning hours, her body is found on the side of a road, about 30 miles away. She was strangled. For any town, this would be a horrific crime that would strike fear into the residents' hearts. But for the Akron, Ohio region in 1987, this murder caused extreme terror, panic, and outrage. There are 3 strongly supported theories in this unsolved murder case, each theory presenting its own level of disgust and outrage, but each also presenting a different terror and threat level. The first theory is someone close to the victim attacked and killed the girl. The second is maybe someone she only thought she knew, or someone on the fringes of her social circles is responsible. And thirdly, and certainly the most terrorizing theory, she was the victim of an undetected serial killer. You see, there is evidence to suggest that this murder was not a one-off. This murder could be just one in a string of murders of women in the area. 4 women were found murdered in Summit County in the final 18 weeks of 1987. All of those murders, to this day, are still unsolved. This is True Crime Garage, and this is the case of Barbara Blatnik in the 1987 Summit County murders. Our featured case takes place in December of 1987. Barbara Ann Blatnik was a fairly typical 17-year-old girl. She lived in Garfield Heights, Ohio. This is on Band Drive with her mom, Teresa, her dad, John, and her 19-year-old sister, Donna. Barbie, as she was called, had feathered 1980s style blonde hair and is described as cute and bubbly. Her father described her as a free spirit who loved people, maybe too much. She loved heavy metal music, makeup, dancing, babysitting, and hanging out with her friends, of which she had a lot. Barbie's sister Donna, whom True Crime Garage spoke with at length in our research for the show, describes her younger sister frankly as a girl who liked to party. She was known to drink, dabble in drugs, smoke, and basically live the party lifestyle. Now, we said she loved loud, heavy metal music. Captain, one thing we have in common with Barbie, and anyone who listens to our other show Off the Record knows this, one of her favorite bands was AC/DC. Barbie had a pack of girlfriends that was very tight, and they all hung out with a bunch of neighborhood guys at a bike shop on Warner Road called Motorcycle Specialties, where they would go to party. According to our sources, the bike shop owner liked pretty girls around and would supply booze and pot. Now, Barbie had a boyfriend. His name was Jerry, and the two were dating on and off for about a year. From what we understand, this wasn't a relationship that was likely to go down the traditional route of dating, marriage, and kids. Donna says her sister liked boys and was known to date around, never really being exclusive with anyone. Barbie had been in trouble a few times and transferred high schools in January, leaving Garfield Heights High School and switching to Erie View Catholic, where she was a junior. According to her family, although Barbie was a handful, she had no enemies, and on the contrary, Barbie had lots of friends and was known as a fun, scrappy, badass girl. Anyway, Barbie set out on the afternoon of December 19th, which was a Saturday, with some friends to go to a party. She dressed in jeans, a sweater, jewelry, and she had her comb, money, and cigs in her back pocket as usual. Newspaper reports at the time state that she left her home either around 4 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. Reports differ on this.
Do we know why there's such a gap in time?
We have one paper reporting 4 p.m. and one reporting 6:30 p.m. We don't know why there's a discrepancy in that time frame. But what we do know is that she left with friends and they went to a party on Turney Road, which was about 1.5 miles away from Barbie's home. It's unclear whether this party was at someone's home or somewhere else. We don't know who hosted this gathering.
Well, it's also hard sometimes to define what an actual quote-unquote party is. Party could be 8 people sitting around a house or 100 people.
Or a couple of teenage kids in somebody's backyard or at a park.
Right.
Now, newspaper reports stated, and Donna confirmed this, that Barbie called home sometime after 10:30 p.m. This just to say that she would be home soon. Now, Barbie's sister Donna tells us that this was very unusual. Barbie did not usually check in. Typically, she would go out with friends and she would come home or she would crash at someone's house. It wasn't uncommon for her to stay out all night, sleeping at a friend's. It was uncommon for her to call home. Remember, this is 1987, so this would also require her to find a landline to make that call.
Who took the call?
Her parents answered that call.
So, but can we definitively say that it's her? I mean, because I know with my parents, if I would have called, especially like on a school night or the weekend night and said, hey, I'm going to, and it was a quick call, I might be able to confuse them by having a friend call.
I don't think anybody's disputing that it was Barbie on the phone. But despite that unusual call, saying that she would be home, she didn't come home. Her parents went to bed and didn't worry. The next morning, they assumed that she was at a friend's. Barbie's mother and sister went out Christmas shopping. Little did Teresa and Donna know that while they were shopping, 2 cops showed up at their house. John Blatnik was asked to go to the morgue in Cuyahoga Falls. Barbie had been found dead. We have been able to shed a little more light on the events of the last night of Barbie's life. This thanks to Donna and also from the Justice for Barbara Blatnik website, run by a local armchair detective who wants to help bring closure to the Blatnik family. Here's what we found. Barbie met up with her good friend, Michelle, that afternoon at a party at the bike shop on Warner Road. This is in addition to the party on Turney Road that Barbie told her parents she was going to, if in fact that was true.
All right, so she meets up with her friend Michelle.
Right.
They're going to go to the bike shop. That's where they normally hang out, have these little parties, little gatherings.
Yeah, so when Michelle meets up with Barbie, it sounds like one of them is already at the bike shop on Warner Road.
All right.
At this party. So the first time that Michelle sees Barbie, according to Michelle, is at this bike shop where they were known to hang out and party.
Okay, so then they're going to go to another party.
No, that's why I think things are a little confusing here. So we have the statement that Barbie tells her parents that she's going to a party on Turney Road, right?
Right.
And then we have Michelle who's going to add some detail, fill in some blanks of the time that Barbie was gone that night. And she's saying that the first time that she sees Barbie is at this party at the bike shop on Warner Road. So a different party. So if in fact there was even a party on Turney Road that Barbie was going to go to, she could have actually gone to that party and then went to the bike shop afterwards. I think this is part of the reason why we have some different things within the timeline regarding when she left the house that day.
Yeah, and I think it's tricky too, because there are some people, when you're friends with people when you're younger, they, you'd be hanging out at your buddy's house and they'd just be saying, well, we're going to go to such and such house and we're going to go to somebody else's house. And it might be because they know the parents know the parents better, but you never end up going there. Does that make sense?
Well, the other thing too that we got to keep in mind is I don't know 100% when this Barbara Blatnik website was created by the local armchair detective.
Mm-hmm.
But Michelle is supplying the armchair detective with this statement of the timeline for that night or what she knows of the timeline for that night. And this could be 20 years later.
All right. So we have a gathering at the bike shop. That's where Barbie runs into her friend Michelle.
Michelle was Barbie's friend who had just had a baby, and the two actually hadn't seen each other in a while. Now, Michelle also had another girlfriend with her, and they did eventually meet up with at least one other girl. Their names are Linda and Sheila. The four of them partied at the bike shop along with a bunch of other local teens. This bike shop had a basement, and the owner, Jeff, was known to provide booze and marijuana to attract teens to hang out there during the winter months when they couldn't party outdoors. The girls partied there for a while, and then they left in Michelle's car to go to a pub that served minors. This is on East 71st Street. Barbie and her friends were known to hang out at pubs like this, where drinking rules weren't enforced and they were open late.
Right, and some people are probably listening right now going, what? Bike shop owners are supplying drugs for kids to hang out? Bars serve underage people, because that is cracked down on a lot more now. Mm-hmm. Back in the 80s, even in the 90s, there was plenty of bars that you could go to because they had no customers. So they were fine with serving underage people.
Right. And I really feel like it was in the early 2000s, at least in this area, which we are somewhat close to her area, maybe hour and a half, 2 hour drive, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But in our area, it wasn't until the early 2000s where they really cracked down on that. Everybody, either themselves or knows somebody that had a bar that they could go into and get a couple drinks and be 18 years old, let's say, or 19 years old, right? This is where things get a little tricky, because now we know that they're at the pub, okay? But at 10:30, when that call goes from Barbie to her parents, it's not known where that call was placed. So that gets to be a bit of a difficult thing. It could have been something as simple as calling from a payphone at that pub. But we don't have anybody else to tell us that they were present when she made that call. So anyway, we have the girls. They sat at a table in the pub, chatting and drinking. They say that nothing seemed amiss. According to Michelle, anyway, there was no one who seemed strange or threatening at the pub.
All right, so we know that this call happened around 10:30, but based on Michelle's records, we don't know what time she left the bike shop, what time they got to the pub, so we don't know if this call came from the bike shop or while they're at the pub or after the pub.
It would seem that we do know what time they left the pub. So it would seem that this call would have had to have taken place, if we are going off of Michelle's events of that night, that the call would have had to have taken place at either the pub or at the bike shop.
Right.
Because Michelle goes on to say that the girls, all of them including Barbie, stayed at the pub until closing time, which was 3:15 a.m. At that time, Michelle drove Barbie to the intersection of Warner Road and Grand Division Avenue. This is right near the bike shop. So if you look at the area on a map, you can see that it's a residential neighborhood, but Warner Road has commercial businesses like convenience stores, automotive repair shops, and so on. Now, Barbie says that she was going to Jerry's house. Remember, Jerry is the boyfriend, or the guy that she was seeing at the time.
Jerry Dingleberry.
So this is fairly close to the place where Michelle drops Barbie off. He lived with his older brother Bob and his parents in a house behind the AC Delco auto parts store, which was another place where the kids would meet up to party in the yard and the parking lot outside. This mostly in the summertime when it was warmer outside.
Right.
Michelle and the other friend dropped Barbie off there and then drove off and never saw or heard from her again. The next morning, Sunday, December 20th, around 10:20 a.m., Barbara's nude and bruised body was found in a wooded area just off O'Neill Road near the Blossom Music Center in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. This is about 30 miles away from where Barbara was last seen.
Yeah, it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Cuyahoga Falls is a totally different area of Ohio and is a suburb of Akron, whereas Barbara lived in Garfield Heights near Cleveland. Now, initial reports confused things because they stated that Barbie was found on the grounds of the Blossom Music Center. This is an outdoor concert venue, the kind of place where like 15,000 people can watch a concert.
Yeah.
It's popular in that area anyway.
I saw Radiohead there.
Ooh, fantastic. Barbie and her friends had been there in the past to see concerts, but she was nowhere near it on the night in question. It turns out that she wasn't found on the grounds of Blossom. Detectives corrected this on December 22nd. She was found near a wooded area on the side of a nearby access road that would not have been heavily trafficked on a Sunday morning in December. We don't know whether Blossom would have been open in December, although it seems unlikely unless they had some kind of Christmas holiday show. Some of these places have holiday light displays, and we do know that Blossom in modern times has a Halloween Fright Fest in October.
Yeah, but a lot of these concerts, like we had Germain Amphitheater here, which is similar to Blossom, but a lot of those concerts, don't you remember them like closing down around midnight? Like it wasn't like a bar show where you'd stay there till 2 o'clock in the morning.
I remember some of them closing at 11 p.m. Because of noise ordinances. I'm assuming that it was not open that night and probably not open during the cold weeks of early winter. We have little details of how and by whom Barbie was spotted. Newspaper reports stated that it was an employee of KST Oil and Gas who spotted Barbie's body as he drove along the road. The Akron Beacon Journal and other papers reported that she was found about 10 feet north of O'Neill Road. O'Neill Road has a strange orientation in that it runs north and south, then curves sharply and runs east to west, and then turns again into north and south. Barbara was found on the northern side of the east-west portion, which falls between two other more unused roads. O'Neill Road runs parallel to another road that abuts the Cuyahoga Valley National Recreation Area. As for the person who found her, it doesn't seem bizarre that an oil and gas company worker would be out and about on that desolate stretch of road if he was on duty, perhaps even working nearby. What's horrifying is that Barbie's sister Donna tells us that when this person found Barbie, who had been dumped naked on the roadside like a piece of garbage, she was still alive. Barely, but alive. And sadly, that was not the case for long.
I couldn't even imagine being at work and coming across somebody that is losing their life.
Yeah, well, we do have some of this autopsy information because it was released to the newspapers at the time. So the Summit County coroner, this is William A. Cox, performed the autopsy promptly after she was found. A preliminary report was released on Monday. The Beacon Journal quoted Cox's statement in some broadcast interviews, and what he said was very interesting. He said that Barbie was killed in an unidentified place and her body was taken to where it was found just a couple of hours before it was discovered. So now we have to question, how could he come to this conclusion? One thought I had is possibly since she was still breathing when found, he may have been estimating that she would not have survived long outside in the cold after such a brutal attack.
Mm-hmm.
Or we have this too, this possibility. Someone, perhaps even the same oil and gas worker or someone else the police talked to, had drove by this area on O'Neill Road just a couple of hours before,
right?
And he or she was certain that Barbie was not there at that time.
Well, like you said, this worker could have been working in the area, so he could have been paying attention and said, well, when I entered my route, I didn't see anybody there.
Whatever the case may be, the coroner will stick with this timeline and stick to that statement. As he stated, the coroner didn't believe that the O'Neill Road site was the murder scene. Whether he could have concluded this because of lack of blood, signs of a struggle, drag marks, or disturbed foliage, we don't know. And we have no idea if Barbie was carried or dragged to the dump site or just dumped out of a vehicle. Now, Coroner Cox also stated that Barbie was intoxicated when she died. This does go along with what we hear from Michelle, her friend. He did not indicate a time of death, but we know that she was still alive when found at 10:20. As for when the attack occurred, we can narrow that down ourselves. If we assume her friend Michelle is accurate about the timeline she provided, then Barbie was still alive and well at around 3:30 a.m. when the girls were dropped off near Jerry's house. And she was found at 10:20 a.m. So sometime between the hours of 3:30 a.m. and 10:20 a.m., someone raped and strangled Barbie. And they beat her so badly that her neck had to be covered by a scarf at her funeral service to disguise the bruising. Barbara was found wearing only her contact lenses and a class ring that displayed her school and her first name inside of it. Her clothes and other jewelry that she was wearing that night have never been found. Now, this is a little known fact that was never released to the papers, but we learned this from Donna, from Barbie's sister. It was the 80s, and Barbie was wearing at least 4 or 5 earrings and wearing, tons of stacked bracelets, at least 2 necklaces, and possibly other jewelry that night.
Kind of like the Madonna style.
Or Mr. T.
Yeah.
None of these were found at the scene. The class ring, we have to wonder, did the killer, if he took and removed all these other items, why not take the class ring? Was it something as simple as he didn't see it? Or was it too hard to get off? He couldn't take it off of her finger?
But you said the earrings were in, or they were taken?
No earrings. The only thing she had on her was her contact lenses and class ring.
Yeah. I would assume it was something, just didn't see it, or maybe he couldn't get it off.
Yeah, he would have had no way of knowing that her name was inside of this ring.
Well,
which is actually...
That's if you're assuming that the person that attacked her didn't know who she was.
No, I mean, her name was inside of the ring, so you would have to remove the ring to see her name.
Right.
There. So if the ring never came off, he would not have known that. And we can't really go down the road too much of whether he wanted her to remain unidentified for a period of time or if he cared at all. But regarding this ring, I want to point that out because this is actually how they were able to identify her. So they have her school class ring, and then they have her name inside of it. That's what led them to realize that we have Barbara Blatnik that we found on the side of the road here.
No one really has time to go to the post office. You're busy. That's why you need Stamps.com. Stamps.com is a must for any small business owner. Stamps.com brings you all the amazing service of the U.S. Post Office right to your computer. Whether you're a small office sending invoices, an online seller shipping out products, or even a warehouse sending thousands of packages a day, Stamps.com can handle it all with ease.
And I use Stamps.com for all of my personal shipping needs as well. You can simply use your computer to print official U.S. postage 24/7 for any letter, any package, any class of mail, anywhere you want to send. Then once your mail is ready, you just hand it to your mail carrier or drop it in a mailbox. With Stamps.com, you get 5 cents off every first-class stamp and up to 40% off priority mail. Not to mention, it's a fraction of the cost of those expensive postage meters. Right now, our listeners get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, plus free postage, and a digital scale without any long-term commitments.
Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in Garage. That's Stamps.com and enter promo code Garage. Check out Stamps.com today. With more than 70 sizes, including their signature half-cup sizes, Third Love designs bras with breast size and shape in mind for a perfect fit and a premium feel. Just answer a few questions via Third Love's Fit Finder quiz to find your perfect fit in 60 seconds. Then, thanks to Third Love's 100% fit guarantee, you can wear, wash, and put your bra to the test for 60 days. And if you don't love it, you can return it. And Third Love will wash it and donate it to a woman in need.
This is hands down the most comfortable bra you'll own. With straps that won't slip, tagless labels, and lightweight super thin memory foam cups. I know several ladies out there that have told me they ordered once from Third Love just to try it out, and now they will not order their bras from anywhere else. 1, because you're going to get the perfect fit. 2, and it's super comfortable. And then there's the 100% fit guarantee. So you got really nothing to lose. Third Love knows that there's a perfect bra for everyone. So right now they are offering our listeners 15% off your first order. Just go to thirdlove.com/garage now to find your perfect fitting bra.
And get 15% off your first purchase. That's thirdlove.com/garage for 15% off today.
Everybody out there knows that hiring is difficult. It's hard to find qualified candidates, it takes a long time, and there are often too many applicants. But there's one place you can go where hiring is simple, fast, and smart. A place where growing businesses connect to qualified candidates. That place is ZipRecruiter.com/garage.
ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards. But they don't stop there. With their powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. As applicants come in, ZipRecruiter analyzes each one and spotlights the top candidates so you never miss a great match. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day.
And you're going to be able to try it for free. That's right, because right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/garage. That's ZipRecruiter.com/garage.
That's ZipRecruiter.com/garage.
ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
All right, we're back. Cheers, mates. Everybody keeps asking us where they can find all the episodes. Download the Stitcher app. They're free on the Stitcher app. Also, check out our show on Stitcher Premium called Off the Record.
Let's get into this investigation some more. So Barbie's case was assigned to the Cuyahoga Falls PD. She was found in Summit County, not her native Cuyahoga County. Keep in mind, Barbie had no ties to Cuyahoga Falls that police could find, and no one could think of a reason why she would be in that area. All anyone knew was that Barbie and her friends were very familiar with the Blossom Music Center. So Barbie's case was investigated based on the jurisdiction of the body, not the jurisdiction where she had attended a party and been out, and about just hours before her death. This is standard procedure. But if the murder took place in or near Garfield Heights by a person or persons who knew her, perhaps this is why her case remains unsolved. And perhaps dumping her in Summit County may have been quite deliberate. After the autopsy, Coroner Cox made some statements to the media that are interesting. Barbie was strangled to death. We don't know whether manual or with an implement. And she was raped. What's intriguing here, and these are some uncomfortable details to cover in the case, but they're important to the case. So bear with me here for a minute. The main thing that's intriguing about what Cox went out of his way to clarify regarding Barbara being raped, he says, quote, by more than one person, end quote. This statement was made to the media on Tuesday, December 22nd, so only 2 days after Barbie was found dead. The question becomes, how could the coroner know this detail? This is 1987 and very, very early in the DNA testing era. And what is the likelihood that a small town in Ohio had access to the highest level of DNA testing available at the time, or could complete that testing within just 48 hours? My guess is slim to none. One thing that is possible is that perhaps the coroner found two different samples of semen on different parts of Barbie's body, and he did blood type testing, which showed two different types. What seems more likely is that Cox may have just jumped to this conclusion based on what he determined in the autopsy, that Barbie had been raped repeatedly. He said, quote, it was repetitious. I believe that we are dealing with more than one person. Whether or not this is correct is really anyone's guess. In any event, Coroner Cox said that Barbie was raped by more than one perpetrator. It's interesting to hear Cox describe the state of DNA testing back in late 1987. The following appeared in a Beacon Journal article about Barbie's case on December 23rd, 1987, where it says, quote, sperm taken from the girl's body has been sent to a New York firm for analysis of genetic content because molecular genetic material, DNA, is different for everyone except identical twins. A print of this material would be equivalent to a fingerprint for positive identification, Cox said. The question is there enough to cultivate? If anything ever came of this DNA analysis, police have not revealed that. An article in the Beacon Journal in February of 1988 stated that although Coroner Cox used the DNA test on Barbie, he said nothing had been produced to help identify a suspect.
Well, and you wonder, did they have enough to identify a suspect?
Right. And that's the question that he first posed when they were going to send it off for analysis. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't know if that means they didn't get a match to anyone or whether they weren't able to extract a profile at all, as you're saying. Mm-hmm. For what it's worth, we did ask the sergeant currently in charge of the Cuyahoga Falls Detective Unit whether there was any testable DNA in Barbie's case, and he told us that, quote, we've done everything we can do with regard to DNA, end quote, and he would not comment on whether any samples remain intact for future testing.
Right, so we can't assume either way, but if they have it, we know now we're in the golden age, and this could get solved.
Donna, her sister, does not know whether any DNA from Barbie's attacker remains either. She does know, though, that her sister was a fighter and would almost certainly have harvested perpetrator DNA under her fingernails as she fought for her life.
I know that they did a toxicology report and they said that she had been drinking, but I wonder if they went any further, because let's say there wasn't DNA underneath her fingernails. I mean, do we know that?
No, we don't know that. That's just speculation by her family.
And with her sister saying, look, my sister was a fighter, this also makes you wonder, was Barbie, in a state where she could even fight back? Or was she so heavily intoxicated or drugged by something where she couldn't fight back?
Right. And really the simplest thing with all of these words that the coroner is saying, really all that's providing to us, the general public, is that they have or had some form of DNA. They know that she was raped, and they believe that she was dumped there within just a couple of hours of being found.
Mm-hmm.
So another intriguing tidbit that the coroner mentioned to the media, this involved something found on Barbie's body. So the coroner found that she had something written on her hand, 2 lines of text written in pen. So during the autopsy, this is what Cox says, we noticed that there was some kind of writing in the palm of her left hand. Some of it was legible and some was not. He stated that the first line contained numbers and the second line was words. Possibly Cox guessed it was an address. So what did the authorities in Summit County do to try to interpret the writing, which the press immediately seized upon as a possible clue left by Barbie as to her killer's identity or identities?
Mm-hmm.
Without her family's consent or even their knowledge, they amputated her left hand and sent it to the FBI lab in Washington for analysis. Cox said that the lab had sophisticated laser and infrared technologies that might enable them to decipher the wording on Barbie's palm, and that he should have the results in a few weeks. And that's the last the public heard of this writing on her palm. Whether or not it was an actual clue, well, we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's weird because, okay, we do know that she went to a bike shop that she went to often. Why would you write down that address?
Right.
This other party that she told her parents about, if she left an address when she called, I would then assume that that would be the address that you might find on her hand. But we could also assume that maybe she knew where that party was too.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gets dropped off at her boyfriend's house, or we're calling it her boyfriend, right? But she was kind of not one to have serious relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You would assume that she knew the address.
Of course she does, yeah.
Right. So why would you write that down on your hand? So if it's not a phone number, which that would make sense to me as well, you're out at some parties, you run into some friends or old friends, hey, here's my number. But the coroner is saying, I think it's an address, numbers, words underneath. To me, you'd only write that down if you're going to a place that you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, is this a sign? Okay, we don't have any information back. They sever her hand, they send it to the FBI. Why the family hasn't got some answers on this is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, even more so that they weren't asked for permission to do so, or at least even told about it.
Yes, right. I maybe not asking for permission, but saying, hey, this is what we're doing because this is how we think we can solve this, and this is what we discovered. That's appalling, really. That's like, that's just very disrespectful to Barbie and her family.
Well, they likely didn't get the information from it even during this testing that they were hoping to get.
Right, but let's just assume that Cox is correct, right? That it was some kind of address. Then it almost implies that she knew she was going somewhere or possibly going to go somewhere after she gets dropped off at her boyfriend's house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or, I mean, it could have been for any type of future use. We don't know that it had to have been for that night. And when I first read this statement, my mind jumped to a phone number. You know, I could see, we've all done it, whether it be a piece of paper or on your hand, where you write down someone's name and a phone number. But the way that he says it, when he says that there were numbers on top and some type of words on the bottom, that to me, I'm going with Cox on this one, because that's how I would typically write down an address. You know, the numeric and then the street name. Yeah. So the other thing too is we've not actually seen this, and not many people have, apparently, including the family. So it's very likely that whether you're able to make it out or not, what was written, there's a chance that he could have looked at this and said, well, there's only 4 or 5 numbers on top, not enough for an actual phone number. Again, this type of laser technology back then, we have discussed this on some of the other cases that we covered that were around this same time frame. It wasn't uncommon for them to bring in this laser technology from the FBI to try to find fingerprints on a body or on certain items. So this is really just to try to paint a better picture and fill in some of the blanks, because if there weren't blanks, they wouldn't have had to send it off to be tested.
Well, and this is also kind of the problem with having where she was found, not where we think the actual crime took place, but where she was found, investigate this crime. Because again, maybe you have some smeared letters or numbers or whatever, but maybe detectives within her hometown would know what those meant. You know what I mean? Like, they have a better chance of, does that make any sense?
I mean, I know what you're getting at, but I don't know. I do think that there is confusion in this case, because they did follow protocol, and the investigative agency was where the body was found.
Right. But which I understand is protocol. But again, it's, to me, the protocol should be, not only are we going to have where she was found investigate, but where she came from. We're going to have them involved. Because again, a name or a number might ring a bell to a local detective, where it might mean nothing to somebody from Cuyahoga Falls, So
when we covered the Tony Muncie case that took place in the 80s as well, and in Ohio as well, there was a bit of a struggle for jurisdiction regarding that case. I don't know that there was necessarily a struggle for jurisdiction here, but just to give some people an example of such, in Tony Muncie's case, he lived in Columbus, Ohio. He was found in Delaware County and found within, 24 hours or so after he was last seen.
Yeah, now a lot of people, just to clear this up, a lot of people are going, Tony Muncie, I don't know if I heard that episode, is one of our bonus episodes. We only have 2, Tony Muncie and the Bricka Family Murders. You can find those on iTunes or on our website.
Yeah, and during that time, Columbus PD said, we want to take this case on because we believe he was killed likely in Columbus or by somebody that was in Columbus. Okay.
Right.
And Delaware County was like, no, we're going to take it because we found the body in Delaware County. What transpired there, in my opinion, I don't mean to criticize, but the leads that Delaware County was following, they weren't equipped to handle that type of case back then. Mm-hmm. They are nowadays, but not back then. I think it would have been a different outcome had Columbus Police Department been the one to lead the investigation. Or, I shouldn't say lead, because they weren't really allowed to be involved very much at all.
Right. So what you're saying is not to offend, but hey, you guys are just little pieces of shit.
Well, I don't know the way that it went down in Barbie's case. I don't know that there was a struggle for jurisdiction. What I'm getting at here is,
but see what I'm saying, the new protocol, not to cut you off, sorry, but
new protocol is everybody works together.
That's the new protocol.
Right. I mean, somebody may still have the lead on a
Right.
case, but
Share the
oftentimes we see,
information.
at least here in Ohio, what we've seen with our own eyes, and a lot of times with the cases that we've covered elsewhere, what we see is when we're reporting this stuff, it's like we mentioned 2 or 3 or 4 agencies when we're talking about some of
Right.
these cases. So I don't know how much involvement Garfield Heights actually had in this situation, because we know that it was Summit County that had the case, and we know still to this day the case remains unsolved and Summit County still has the case. Where I will give criticism goes back to the removal of the hand, because this is the way that this whole thing went down, and it's a bit shameful to me. The family discovered that Barbie's hand was severed and sent away, effectively mutilating the corpse, when a reporter called the Blatnik home. And the person that answered the phone was 19-year-old Donna, her sister. And she was simply asked by the reporter, why was your sister's hand, why had it been cut off? What I'm getting at is I'm not suggesting that they would have had to ask for permission, but I do think there are better ways to handle this situation when you have loved ones that are mourning the loss of their sister and their daughter, where you don't have to show any of your cards per se. You could simply say, look, this is one thing that we think will be extremely helpful to the investigation of the murder of your daughter. The hand contains, we believe that it could contain some evidence that could lead us to the perpetrator.
Right. And in order for us to do the best job we can as investigators, we're going to actually turn over this to the FBI.
Right. You don't have to tell them what you found. You
right.
don't have to.
And in doing so, we have to remove her hand.
Right.
And, because it'd be a very difficult thing for a parent, because part of you would just be going, can't they just come here?
Yeah.
Can't they just come here? Do we have to, put her through more than she's already been through?
Right.
And I understand that she passed away at this point, but that's what it feel like, that you're putting her through more torture than is necessary.
So what is known about the investigation is, besides what we've already talked about, by Tuesday, December 23rd, Cuyahoga Falls police had interviewed 15 or 20 people in connection with Barbie's death, including a number of her friends. But they said publicly that they had come up with nothing concrete and had no definite suspects in mind. What, if any, police uncovered in their investigation remains a mystery even to this day. When we inquired of the Cuyahoga Falls sergeant about certain aspects of the case, such as whether police ever found her clothes or jewelry, or whether they could tell us what the message was on her hand, we received basically a no comment, which is fine. That's good. I hope what that means.
Fine.
Well, it's fine. That's good. And I say that because I hope that this is a case that they're revisiting from time to time, and they don't want to show any of those cards that we just talked about.
Right, but you could say something like that. We're currently working on this. We don't want to compromise what we have. But the fact that there's people out there, like you said, armchair detectives. You got people in our family that are still pushing this forward. Now we're trying to push this forward. Sometimes these cops need to get off, stop sitting on their hands, and put out more information. Even if, because that's going to be my argument constantly. You see it like with the Amy Mihalovic case, coming out with new evidence and having press conferences 20 years after the fact. Some of that stuff just doesn't make any sense. And if they have DNA, they need to be testing it.
Well, according to Barbie's family, the clothes and the jewelry were never found. And the police captain at the time, back in 1988, told the Beacon Journal that, quote, we have probably interviewed over 200 people about Barbie's last hours, her whereabouts, and the timeline. 10 years later, reflecting on the unsolved case in 1997, the lead Cuyahoga Falls detective on the case, Larry Wagner, theorized that it hadn't been solved because the crime was probably committed 30 miles away in Garfield Heights, and police didn't have an easy time tracking down witnesses. Wagner said, quote, "She was a fairly popular young lady, so she had a lot of friends and a lot of people we had to look into. I'll bet we interviewed at least 100 people." But he said they had very few solid leads to go on, even chalking her murder up to a possible transient. And that's about it for public knowledge of the official investigation. Now, thanks to the Facebook page and Barbie's sister Donna, again, we have a little more insight into some of the players whom police might have spoke to or looked at in this case. According to Michelle, Barbie did not hook up with Jerry, her boyfriend, that night, at least initially, right? We know that. Jerry wasn't around. She asked to be dropped off on Warner Road and that she was going to head to his house nearby. By local reports, Jerry wasn't home. He was out with his friends that night. We have no idea whether Barbie knocked on the door or just went away when no one answered,
Right.
what the situation could have been. Or, here's a possibility. Or if Bob, Jerry's brother, or anyone else answered the door, if Barbie did approach the door and knock.
Right. Well, because we have to put it out there that it's a possibility that she tells her friends, "Hey, drop me off by my boyfriend's house." And that could have been a meeting spot for her to meet somebody else. So we don't even know if she made it to her boyfriend's house.
Right, exactly. I mean, there could be any number of reasons for her to change her mind and go elsewhere.
Right.
We do know that Jerry was looked at hard by police, but it's unknown whether they ever tested his DNA.
So he's not home that we know of. And
well, we know according to statements that he was out with friends that night.
right, so he has an alibi. He's not at home and he has an alibi.
It seems like Jerry was looked at pretty good by police, but it is unknown whether they ever tested his DNA.
Mm-hmm.
We have been told that several of the guys in the neighborhood, eager to exclude themselves from the suspect pool, agreed to be tested. But we don't know for certain if Jerry was one of them. According to Donna, there were a few who refused, but police seem to have satisfied themselves that Jerry was not involved. We're basing this off of the fact that he was never named a suspect or arrested. He has since passed away.
Yeah, so you got all these local creepos. Think about the shitty things that you had to do with your life where somebody comes up missing, somebody's dead body is found, and you're very eager to get yourself excluded from the investigation.
Well, I don't know that necessarily means that they're creeps or that they've done anything wrong.
Not all of them, but I'm saying out of one of them in that group is super duper creepo, right? And so he's going, "Please test me because I've made a lot of bad decisions and I don't want people to think that I did this."
I don't know.
I'm just saying there's at least one, and I'm just saying that guy made a lot of bad decisions.
It's a possibility, but when they're talking to these individuals, look, if they believe that they have a blood type or anything regarding DNA,
right,
or that type of evidence that can either clear somebody or connect them, they're not going to make their jobs any harder than it has to be. They're going to ask you where you were that night. Do you know Barbara Blatnik? How long have you known her? Do you know any of her friends? Okay, who of them do you know? Would you be willing to submit your DNA or your blood type or any of that evidence to us, and we can either include you or exclude you?
But I'm saying there might be somebody in the audience going with their hand raised, "Please test me." Hey, we're not even talking to you. No, I know you're not talking to me, but please test me. I want to be excluded from this investigation.
I think what's more interesting is the alibis that some of these teenagers and young adults may or may not have had for that night.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of kids and young adults that are, look, I'm not going to accuse them of anything that we don't already know. These are people that are drinking underage, smoking some pot, hanging out, partying, not a big deal, right? That's a fairly common activities for people of that age.
Right.
So no big deal there, no harm, no foul. However, I think where a lot of the trouble that this investigation has got into is going off of the word of these young adults and teenagers that are breaking some very small rules and laws.
Right.
I wonder how well we can trust the alibis and statements provided to detectives regarding what was going on that night with whom and where.
Right. So hypothetically speaking, you got a group of teenagers that were hanging out at the captain's pub, and the captain's pub was serving minors alcohol that night.
Mai Tais and margaritas.
Yeah, loads of Mai Tais, and we got a special drink called the douche canoe. It's very long and it's filled with booze, and it's kind of like a fishbowl. But anyways, so here's what I'm hearing you say. It's a teenage group might tell the cops we were at Tommy's house, or we were just driving around, and not to give the location of the place that they might have been drinking or partying at.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes, did they do anything wrong? No. Are they involved in the crime? No. But it's making a lot of these stories unclear.
Yes. And I base that off of this. So I'm going to create 4 different compartments real quick here regarding these teens and young adults, and especially the young adults that are still living at home with mom and dad. Okay, so we have the A group that may not give a shit about anything, and they're just willing to tell the cops whatever because they don't care. They don't fear the cops. They don't fear their parents. They don't fear the law. Then we have another group who might be terrified of getting in trouble with the law, may not understand the law and think, oh, I sold some pot to these people.
Right.
I'm going to go away forever. Okay. And then you have another group, Group C, that might just be terrified of mom and dad. I don't want to get in trouble with mom and dad, or I don't want to disappoint my parents.
Right.
Then we got Group D, who is going to go, you know what? Maybe I'm a little afraid of the law. Maybe I'm a little afraid of disappointing my parents, but in the sake of doing what's right, I'm going to accept what I've done, and I'm going to tell the truth to the police anyway.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is you still have 2 groups within that large pool of people. We know that she was a popular kid. She had a lot of friends. There's nobody out there saying differently. So you have a large group of people, all of them young adults and teenagers, and you have, if we're going to break that up into just 4 different groups, we got 2 of those 4 groups that probably would bend the truth.
Well, right.
Or leave out details, or,
the other group is the people that don't want to get the establishment that they're at in trouble.
Right. So no, and then on top of that, no, it also can affect your personal life going forward.
Right.
And your activities. Maybe you love going to the bike shop in December and January and getting all boozed up with your buddies, but guess what? After I tell the truth about what I was doing that night when Barbara went missing and then was found dead, guess what? I can no longer say, hey, Mom, Dad, I'm going off to the bike shop. See you in a few hours. That ain't going to fly anymore.
Well, yeah, and all those rats that ratted out the captain's pub. No douche canoe for you. No douche canoe for you.
Well, in episode 2 of this case, Captain, I really want to take a deep dive into what are some other possibilities for that night, for Barbara's last night. And I also want to explore if her murder could be connected to other murders in the area.
A lot more to dive into. If you have thoughts on this, go to truecrimegarage.com and leave your comments on the blog.
Yep, join us back here for part 2. Until then, be good, be kind, and don't litter.